All right. Hello. I should probably get my shit together and have like a countdown or something, but instead I usually go so hardcore on this stuff and I'll probably get there, but for now I'm just doing it as bare bones and chill as possible. My apartment is a bit of a mess at the moment. It's been a crazy year last year. So I worked at Meta and used to basically be a pastor and then deconstructed. I was so into it that I went to seminary and got a master's in theology degree, and then I deconstructed. And kind of while I was at seminary, which was crazy and very interesting, and then had put so much time and energy into kind of designing a very science based, impact driven kind of church idea that I decided to pivot it to a tech company idea. So I sort of DIY'd my way into the tech industry. Like I learned, man, my hair is broccoli hair. I got the broccoli hair today. I I sort of DIY'd my way into the tech industry. Went on YouTube and learned UX design in the span of like a week or two, and then applied to 140 different places. Actually, ended up getting 3 job offers, even though I had no experience as a designer. And I actually accepted a job in Singapore, and then got a job offer in San Diego and accepted that one and unaccepted the first one. And then I got a job in LA. And I was living in LA at the time, so I unaccepted the San Diego one and accepted the LA one. And it was really fun. I really enjoyed that job. I had a guy named Mike who was in charge of the design there. He used to be at Netflix, and it was this small startup, and he was awesome, and I really enjoyed working with him, and we chatted every day. And then the powers that be, the people that kind of were in charge of that startup, for a variety of reasons, decided to cut Mike out and made me head of design there because I was I was good and I was a hard worker, and that did not set well with me at all. I felt like they were kind of screwing him over. He had given 2 years of his life. They didn't really ask me if I wanted to be head of design. They just kind of like made me head of design because the Mike was gone at that point, which I did not appreciate really. So anyway, all that to say, I rose the ranks there, became head of design, went to Cameo, became head of design there as well. So did really well. Then got recruited by Meta and was a UX designer and product manager there. So that was fun. I didn't personally super love the fun part was that they wanted me to be a part of their company and recruited me. What I didn't love about Meta was how disorganized it was. It was, in my opinion, absolute chaos there. Teams working on projects that were similar but didn't know about each other. It was just like, yeah, kind of, and like most of my time was spent tracking people down. So anyway, all that to say, I kind of got those tech skills and tech network because I wanted to build my own startup, which was basically a plan to kind of salvage my church ideas that I had spent so long on, like 10 years of time thinking about, that I didn't want to waste them, but I didn't feel comfortable being a Christian anymore. So I decided to pivot them to a tech company. And so we built it. And then I had some co founder drama, and it's just been kind of a. Not, I didn't super love the VC raise funds hypergrowth stuff either. Like it just didn't. It's really it's a weird system, and I don't feel like it prioritizes quality products. I feel like it prioritizes a lot of things that aren't healthy, and I ended up getting pretty unhealthy during my time as a startup person executive in the startup that I started myself, and then also at Cameo and Meta, and the company I worked at was called Greenfly as well. The first one, that I got a job at. I was working so hard, just would get up at like 5 in the morning, drive to work, get home at like 6 or 7 p.m., make dinner, go to sleep, get up in the morning, do the same thing over and again. Over again. Didn't really have time to take care of myself. And we built a lot of really cool stuff, and I rose the ranks and was successful. But yeah, didn't really like how that kind of success had affected me health wise and physically and mentally and all that stuff. So I made the decision last year to go a different direction, which is crazy and it's been very challenging. So I decided that I was going to become a nutrition coach and a trainer and essentially help people, high performers, get healthy. So, like, I understood the demanding lifestyle of working in tech and also being an executive and a startup founder and all that stuff. And so I was like, okay, if I struggled with these things, how can I do nutrition coaching and training in such a way that would help people who are in the same camp that I was in? Because I think it's definitely possible to do it. It's just a matter of knowing what the steps are. So anyway, so I started a new company called Fit Nerds, which is like um, a company that helps people who are high performers stay healthy and get healthy. And it's been really, really rewarding and fun. So anyway, we have like coaching packages, and I have a number of clients, and they're all doing really cool stuff. And kind of my goal with that is that if I can help the people who are out there building amazing things and changing the world be as healthy as possible, then I feel very fulfilled as a human being. So that's been really fun and going really well. It's just hard to leave like a really amazing paying job to then build like something from scratch. So luckily my wife has been very supportive of that and has been a trooper as I've been getting things going. And so that's been really exciting. Um, so yeah, so anyway, if you know of anybody who has health needs or wants to, lose fat or build muscle or get healthier or optimize their cognitive function to be as effective of a founder as possible, people who are into sort of optimizing their life or yeah, making sure that they're maintaining their health while they're building companies and building products, let me know. I would absolutely love to chat with them, coach them. Yeah, it's been very extremely fulfilling. It reminds me of being a pastor, except now it's more like science backed and evidence based, and actually helping people get healthy as opposed to kind of like I felt like kind of spinning a narrative to people that wasn't ultimately always that helpful to them. Sometimes caused them to avoid their problems or not look at things realistically. I didn't think that religion was that much of a solid stepping stone to healing versus what I'm doing now, which I feel like is absolutely a very solid stepping stone to healing. So, anyway, I am going to start these live streams. So, a part of this, it's been so fulfilling to work one on one with people, but I kind of was feeling this. I have lots of kind of different thoughts, and being a pastor was nice because I got to research and present and do things. And so, what I thought I would do is research various topics and then use this space to present on those topics and have like kind of a discussion or Q&A section toward the end of it. And it would be any kind of topic that would be related to business, entrepreneurship, health, body. I'm very open to different things. Today, I think I'm going to talk about critical thinking skills and approaching a situation where you don't know exactly what's happening. The reason I'm selecting that for this week is because I've been having a lot of discussions with my family about the Trump stuff and about how our country is doing and all the different decisions that are being made. And I personally am very aggressively nonpartisan, and I use that language very specifically. So I'm not a Democrat, not a Republican. I'm not only not those things, but I'm aggressively nonpartisan. I don't think that highlighting all the ways that we're different is that helpful. I think there's a huge middle part of American culture, and I think the two sides are kind of at the poles of that. And so I'm more interested in the big middle section. So that's why I say I'm aggressively nonpartisan. I'm interested in people who are interested in believing as many true things as possible, who are interested in helping other people and helping themselves. I think that's a weird divide that sometimes happens too, where like some people are like, I will sacrifice myself and help everyone I can possibly help. But the problem is you then run out of resources or run out of steam. And likewise, I think people are only focused on themselves only and interested in just their own success. That's also not sustainable and not helpful as a society. So that's why I'm aggressively nonpartisan, is because I believe in focusing on yourself, optimizing your own strength and power and health and life, and then also working to optimize the health and life of other people too. So that's sort of where I come from on that. And my family is very conservative, and that is totally fine with me. However, there's not a lot of like critical thinking skills that happen, and there's a lot of kind of like rhetoric, or like even my dad is like kind of one of those people who believes that, or wants to believe very strongly, that the earth is like very young, like thousands of years old, and Native Americans had this like special woo woo connection to nature, and sound waves and vibrations could lift the pyramid stones to build the pyramids. And he's just like kind of like that kind of a person. And he's always kind of been that way. He grew up as a very poor farmer and would read comic books and stuff. So I think there's this kind of like escapism thing that happens there. So I get it from a psychological perspective, but it's been challenging to have conversations with my family about deconstruction and philosophy and faith and all that stuff. And they don't really get where I'm coming from often. So anyway, I'm going to have a discussion today and talk a little bit about approaching a situation where you don't really know what to think about it or what is happening and how to think about it, because I feel like that's a skill that I've developed, and I don't see a lot of people in my family or in lots of places of the country being able to see a situation and then think critically or effectively about it so that they get to what's actually true. I think that kind of link of how do I think about this to achieve the result of actually believing as many true things as possible or getting to the truth of something, that linkage is not very evident in a lot of the leaders that we have, be them political leaders or business leaders or anything. I think, having this kind of like, I don't want to believe bullshit kind of mentality. I think people kind of want that on the surface, but they don't employ the right tools to actually get to a solid result. So I'm going to do a little bit of drawing. This is my first one. I usually prepare like a fucking maniac for these things. And that's how I was when I was a pastor. I would like rehearse and spend like weeks and weeks and weeks putting together a teaching. And this time I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to sit down and kind of flow and see what happens. I tried this. I got asked to speak on nutrition a few weeks ago at a community college here in San Francisco, and I wrote it in like 10 minutes and spent like 20 minutes on the slides. And I was just like, instead of spending hours and hours and hours, I'm gonna just kind of go with it and see what happens. And the kids, community college students, are not known for their attentiveness, but they were like gripped to my presentation for 40 minutes. I had no idea if the presentation was going to be 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 3 hours. I had no idea. I just kind of pounded it out in 10 minutes. I wrote the whole thing. And then I gave it. It ended up being about 40 minutes long. They were attentive the whole time and it asked a ton of questions at the end. So much so that it filled up the entire hour and a half slot. And so there were more questions than what we could get to, which made me feel awesome. So anyway, all that to say, I'm just going to kind of flow. If you're joining, I can see chat. I'm using OBS. I'm brand new at this. So I'm using OBS. I can see chat. If there are people watching, which I have no idea if there are or not, Feel free to say hi in the chat. I will respond as soon as I can. I'm going to do some drawing, but I'll keep bouncing back to this windows to see if there's anyone saying anything or asking any questions. Feel free to ask questions. I'm happy to stop. I'm going to just kind of go through this. No idea how long this will be, but this is just kind of what I was thinking today. So today, let's talk about a little bit about how to think when faced with anything new. Will be sort of the topic for today. So the one not easy, but one sort of example that I like to talk about with this, or hypothetical scenario that I think helps highlight what I'm talking about here, is you come upon a dead body. And you don't know what's happening. And what happens often is that people will create an explanation for this, like the mailman did it. And this is an interesting thing. This is a thing that my family does a lot. So in order to get from here to here, yes, nice. In order to go from here to here, you would need essentially evidence. But I don't think a lot of times people have that kind of time or energy to actually find the evidence. They'll usually just kind of get to this conclusion. And the question I have often is like, how did you get? I will ask this question so much of people that I'm talking to, friends. I'll ask it of my family. Also, let me know if the mic is a little too hot. It looks like it's peeking out on OBS, but I don't know if that's actually crackling or anything. I'll probably get excited, so maybe I'll move this down a little bit. Let me know if I'm popping or anything. Again, like brand new at this, trying to do the actually, let me pause this audio. I think I can pause it. Oh, I see. Interesting. That's probably fine. Okay, so how do we get there? I'm gonna adjust this. This might be a nightmare to make it further away from my face. There we go. Okay. Very interesting. Yeah, I think this awesome chair that I have is going to go into storage as well, so I need to figure something out. Maybe standing would be fun. I don't know. If any of you know how to do this well, just let me know. Okay, so oftentimes, like when I'm talking with my family, they will go straight to this conclusion. So, for example, a real world scenario that happens a lot here is they will come across a universe, like the universe that we're in. And they'll be like, a god made this universe. And so that's like the equivalent of doing this. And then when you ask them about how they got there, how did you get to a god some guy did it, from I came upon a universe? It's very challenging for them to lay out how they did that. So that's why I use this other example, because it's a lot more simple. But that's one example of like a real world scenario that actually happens, and people actually say stuff like that. But and here's what happens, I think, is that people will see something and then their brain will just attribute it to something else. I'm going to make these larger, extra large, huge. There we go. We'll do this one extra large. You get to see my designer, OCD. Okay, so basically they will see something, their brain will immediately assign a conclusion. And the reason it does that often is because of like discomfort with the unknown. This is one primary reason why this happens. So like there's a big evolutionary reason why this is the case. If you are looking into a dark forest and you don't know what's in there, that's obviously a dangerous situation. So the unknown is actually, from a survival perspective, not great. If you're going to put your arm in a hole in some, let's say you're a treasure hunter and you're in some sort of treasure room and there's a hole in the wall and you're going to stick your hand in there. Not knowing what's inside there is a dangerous situation. So your brain like freaks out. If you're about to stick your hand on that hole, your brain is like, warning, like stop at any cost. So that's a very normal standard thing for a human brain to do. And oftentimes what happens with things is like you come upon something that you don't quite understand. And because you don't understand it, there's some unknownness here. Your brain just like fills in a thing. This is something to be aware of. It's technically like a cognitive bias thing, but I'm going to just call it discomfort with the unknown. So that's something to be aware of. In some cases, it can be helpful. In other cases, it can not be helpful. Because in this case, it might not be the mailman that actually killed this person. And so this kind of discomfort with the unknown thing, attributing the mailman as the cause of this when you don't actually know, just to alleviate the discomfort of having something that you don't know, can be problematic because it's not leading you to actually believing a true thing. Oh, I just punched the mic. Sorry about that. So then the second thing I see a lot is that there's some sort of bias. I'm just going to call it a bias. Like the mailman slept with my wife. That happens a lot too. So like, it's convenient to believe that the mailman did it because of some reason. You don't like the mailman, whatever it is. And so if you see something that you don't like, you can attribute, people will often attribute it to something that they don't like. So for example, in like the 1600s, whenever anything that they didn't understand would happen, they would like attribute it to a witch or something like that. This also happens with the devil a lot. Oh, I have a headache. It must be the devil causing me a problem. Or I didn't get the promotion. It must be the devil trying to whatever. So another common one that I hear a lot is one interesting one is if something bad happens to somebody else, it's often like the devil or their faith isn't strong enough or something like that. But usually if someone else, something bad happens to someone else, it's like their faith isn't strong enough. But if something bad happens to me, it's like the devil did it or the God is testing me or something like that. So there's some sort of bias that's like creating an explanation that feels a little bit more comfortable. So going back to the universe example or let's say the afterlife, we don't actually have any idea what happens in the afterlife. There have been multiple studies with near-death experiences, and near-death experiences are all over the place, and lots of people report lots of different stuff globally. And we have essentially no evidence that there's any kind of afterlife or what happens to people when they die. We have no idea. But our brains don't like the unknown, so we try to fill in an explanation for that. And oftentimes that explanation is because of some sort of bias. Someone will have like a religious view, for example. It could be from anywhere. Could be a Muslim view or any kind of religion. Will have this kind of concept of what the afterlife is. And so when a person dies, they will just attribute that bias to that situation. Similar to the kind of like, oh, it was a demon or it was the devil or it's God testing me or whatever. They have this like mental construct. And so when they see an event take place, they take that mental construct and they apply it. So in this case, you feel like the mailman sucks. He slept with your wife. Like you feel like he's a bad person and then you come across a dead body. And so like his name might be top of the list of like possible suspects, even though he might not have anything to do with it. And then the last one is tricky, and I'll try to go through this systematically because this is the one that I see a ton. I would say probably the most often when people are trying to think well and think critically when faced with new things. But basically it's lack of critical thinking process. And I'm going to kind of try to break this down as best I can. So let's say you come across a dead body and it's just a dead body. Assuming that it's murder doesn't super make sense because there could be lots of other explanations for that. Like they could have died of natural causes. Like that. So that's the first thing that you would kind of want to look at. It's just like, what's the evidence about this body? Does it point to murder? Does it point to natural causes? Now let's say that there are 6-inch puncture wounds in the body. So this person has puncture wounds on their body and they're 6 inches deep. And then let's say there's bloody footprints leading away from the body. And let's say the mailman's hat is found in the bushes nearby. So I'm going to try to break this down in terms of 3. So let's say that's the evidence that you have. Does that point to the mailman did it? It actually does not, because the hat being present there is actually only evidence that the mailman was in that area at some point, which isn't surprising given that he's a mailman, so he walks around all over the place. He delivers mail to this house. So he could have, the wind could have blown his hat into the bushes. He couldn't find it 2 hours before whatever happened to this dead body happened. So just the presence of the hat there does not mean that the mailman had anything to do with this dead body. However, we can assume that this person did not die of natural causes because of the puncture wounds and the bloody footprints. Now let's take it a step further and say that there's blood on the mailman's hat. That still does not point to the mailman murdering this person. And the reason is because the mailman could have been accosted by this person who is now dead. Let's say this dead person is a robber or something like that, and they attack the mailman. The mailman has a knife on him and defends himself and ends up killing the person and then flees the scene. And during the altercation, his hat got thrown into the bushes, or let's say, or something. He got punched and his hat flew into the bushes, whatever. So even though there's bloody footprints, there's puncture wounds, 6-inch puncture wounds in the dead body, and there's the mailman's hat with blood on it, does not mean that the mailman murdered them. There's other alternative explanations that fit the evidence and the data perfectly. So what we would need in order to get to the mailman did it is we would then need to go to the mailman's house. We would need to see the bloody shoes. We would need to see that he has a map of where the dead body was going. Let's say the person who is now dead was sleeping with the mailman's wife. We find that out. Let's say this mailman has also attempted murders in the past, multiple murders in the past. All of that evidence would point to the hypothesis that the mailman did it. That's strong evidence. So he has a history of being murderously violent. He's obviously been tracking this person. He had a motive. This person, who is now dead, was sleeping with the mailman's wife. Like, all of those things would support that. Interestingly, when you get to questions about the afterlife or universe or things like that, this is not how people normally approach things. Or even questions about, like, are immigrants bad? They don't get to, yes, they're bad. So, like, another carbon copy example of exactly what we're talking about here. How about that? Yes, nice. I hope also that you can see all this when I'm kind of drawing it. Okay, great. So let's go with the universe example first. You come upon a universe. People want to get to a god. A god did it. But you need to go through the same exact process, same exact critical thinking process that we just went through. And you need to be aware that saying you don't know is actually fine. You don't even need this. You come upon a universe and you can just say, I don't know what happened. Just like you can come upon a dead body and you can say, I don't know what happened. Then you also want to be careful of not putting a bias in here. So let's say you believe that there is a God, and let's say you believe that there's an afterlife and all of these things that come with it. Just because you believe that there's a God does not mean that that God created the universe. So that's another thing to be careful of, is number one and number two. So it's okay for there not to be this. If you just say, I don't know where the universe came from, is totally fine. Our brains don't like it, but that's actually a totally valid response. And then also be careful that your bias isn't driving a conclusion that a god did it. In order to get to from you come upon a universe to a god did it, you need the same critical thinking process that we used here. So even if there was evidence that there was a god and that the god could do miraculous things, that does not mean that it created the universe. Just like the presence of the mailman's hat near the dead body and the fact that the mailman's shoes are size 10 and the bloody footprints were size 10, that does not mean that the mailman killed this person. It could have been that the mailman was attacked and defending himself too. So those are things that we need to make sure we're clear on. So far as I'm aware, there hasn't been any evidence that a god exists. There hasn't been any evidence that a god can create a universe, and it hasn't been any evidence that God that exists used their power of creating universes to create this universe. So that's the steps that you would have to go through. Just like you would need to connect the mailman to this dead body in a way that it was clear that the mailman actually did commit a murder here. The same would be true here. So you would need to demonstrate that a god exists, that god can create universes, has the power to create universes, and then that the third thing you would need is that god used that power to create universes to create this universe. And so far as I know, no one has been able to demonstrate that. But that's the kind of critical thinking that you would need. Same kind of deal with like immigrants. Are immigrants so like or like let's say the country has problems, and this goes for lots of different countries. The immigrants did it is another common connection that I see, but again, we could say we don't know why the country has problems. If we want to dig into that, we need to make sure that we aren't leveraging our biases, which is the second thing. So if, let's say, you hate black people or whatever, it would be easy to, or let's say you hate immigrants, it would be easy to blame the immigrants for the country's problems. Or if you hate black people, it would be easy to blame the black people for the country's problems. But that's not a clear connection. You would need to establish that. That's just a leaning into your biases. And then in order to draw this link, you would have to demonstrate that immigrants are the cause of a problem and that problem has accumulated so much that it is causing the country itself problems. And so that would, it shouldn't be challenging to find that data, but you would need like strong evidentiary support for that. And so far, like based on the evidence and research that I've seen, immigrants will commit crimes far, far less than the standard population. So as far as I've seen, I haven't seen any evidence that immigrants actually take a bunch of jobs or commit a bunch of crimes or are doing any of the things that are often claimed about them. You'd need a clear critical thinking process to get from there's a bunch of problems to the immigrants are the cause of these problems. That could be done for sure. This one is much harder. It would be, in my opinion, much harder to demonstrate that there's a God, that God can create universes, and then that God used their universe creation powers to create this universe. That's a pretty rough one. You could probably get to some point where you could you could figure out if the immigrants did it is either true or false, because you could look at a variety of different things and metrics that are measured regarding immigrants and see how they compare to the standard population, or you'd have to basically prove somehow that immigrants are taking jobs that would have otherwise gone to citizens. One common example is like I live in California. I lived in LA for like 12 years or something like that. My wife lived there for 20 or 25 years or something. And that was Southern California. Not as much here in Northern California, but in Southern California for sure there were orange groves and all kinds of different agricultural things happening. And oftentimes there were workers that seemed like they could be undocumented workers doing those jobs. The thing that was always interesting to me is like, I don't know any one of my friends, and I have blue collar friends. I have a diverse range of friends. Lots of people of color friends. My wife is Korean, a Korean first generation immigrant, and so she's friends with a lot of people who I rub noses with too, and I don't know anybody who is a citizen who wants to work in an orange grove. So this kind of claim that immigrants are taking jobs that Americans want, I don't see that. Like a lot of the immigrants that I know, especially undocumented immigrants or immigrants that are in the middle of their citizenship process or whatever it is, they're often participating in jobs that I've never seen anyone else want to do, which sucks for them, especially if they're trying to make a better life for their family. And a lot of them have to work multiple jobs and stuff too. I don't know any who are drug dealers. I like that. There's just a lot of like, again, like making claims is fine, but if you're gonna make a claim like the immigrants are the reason for the country's problems, and you're gonna draw that connection there, you need to substantiate it with evidence. So that's all that I'm trying to say here is like, make whatever claim that you want. You could claim that the universe is created by ducks. The ducks did it. Come on, baby. That's totally fine. Make whatever claim you want. All you then need to do is make sure that you go through a critical thinking process to actually establish that those two are in fact connected and that's actually true. And so you would need to demonstrate that there's a bunch of ducks. These ducks have the ability to create a universe, and that these ducks use their universe creating ability to then create this universe. So whatever you want to claim is totally fine. I disagree with a lot of people, especially on the left, in that making the claim is the problem. I think people can claim whatever they want. Again, not a right person. I'm aggressively nonpartisan, as I said before. But let me bounce to the chat, see if anyone. Of course, nobody, because probably nobody is watching this. But that's totally cool. Yeah, again, like I'm not a left person, not a right person. I just and I'm totally okay with any claim. The thing that pisses me off often is that people make just are running around asserting things with essentially no evidence whatsoever. And so if you're going to claim that immigrants are the problem, you need to be able to show that. If you're going to claim that ducks created the universe, you need to show that. If you're going to claim a god created the universe, you need to show that. If you're going to claim that the mailman killed this person and that's why they're dead, then you need to show that. So anyway, so that's kind of the gist of what I wanted to talk about today. I have a variety of topics that I'd like to talk about, and this is going to be, just all kinds of different shit that I can think of. But I wanted to get my feet wet just doing one, and I kind of wanted to improvise a bit and see how that went. So let me know your thoughts on this. The website that I have that I'm using to do the nutrition coaching and health coaching for founders and other high performers is called fitnerds.club. And I have the coaching services on there. You can get in contact with me from there. And basically every week I'm going to just come and do a Ghost Church session. We're just going to talk about some sort of interesting topic that has to do with entrepreneurship or health or optimizing yourself or helping other people or something like that. So as we go, we can kind of define it. But if you have any requests of things that you have been wondering about or want me to cover, please let me know. And I am happy to do some research and do a presentation on it. And then we can have a discussion and a Q&A with the chat about it too. So I'll cut it off there. It's been 40 minutes. Unless anyone has any last thoughts or discussion questions or anything like that, happy to stay on as long as you guys want to chat, and I can answer any questions. I literally can't tell on this screen if there's anybody watching or not. Users in chat, nope. Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to cut it off here then, and then I will be back next week at this exact same time, and we will continue to play around with this and see what happens. All right. See y'all. Bye.